All right, welcome. Today we're tackling a big one, the philosophy of Immanuel Kant. Specifically, we're going to unpack one of his most powerful and, honestly, most misunderstood ideas. This deep dive is brought to you by the philosophical exploration arm of Energy and Personal Excellence, LLC, and comes at the request of its founder, Sachin Karnik. So, we're kicking things off with this really provocative quote from Kant's masterpiece. I have found it necessary to deny knowledge in order to make room for faith. I mean, wow. At first glance, that sounds like a complete betrayal of the Enlightenment, right? The whole Age of Reason thing. But here's the twist. What if that one sentence is actually the key to saving everything? Reason, science, morality, the whole shebang. Let's dig in and see what on earth he was talking about.
Okay, so to really get what Kant was doing, you got to understand the absolute mess he inherited. Philosophy at the time was basically at a dead end. It was stuck in this massive, brutal tug-of-war, and it was threatening to just completely fall apart.
So, you have these two camps. On one side, you've got the rationalists. Think of them as the armchair philosophers. They were convinced that just by using pure reason, like doing math, you could figure out the deepest truths about the universe. Things like the existence of God, the soul, all from the comfort of your study. The problem, their claims were, well, unprovable. Then, on the other side, you had the empiricists. They were all about show me the evidence. They said, nope, all knowledge comes from what we can see, hear, and touch. But this led to a huge problem, pointed out by the philosopher David Hume. He said, hey, if we only know what our senses tell us, we can't really know that one thing causes another. We just see one thing happen and then another. This was a bombshell. It threatened to pull the rug out from under both science and ethics.
And this is where Kant comes in. He read Hume and famously said it woke him from his dogmatic slumber. It was a huge wake-up call. He said that the rationalists were basically building these beautiful castles in the sky with no foundation, while the empiricists, in their skepticism, were about to burn the entire city to the ground. You see the problem? Philosophy was totally stuck. A radical new plan was needed. All right, this is where it gets really good. This is Kant's big move. He doesn't just pick a side in the old fight. No. He flips the whole chessboard over. He called it his Copernican revolution in philosophy, and it changed everything.
See, for forever, really, the assumption was that our minds are like passive blank slates, or maybe mirrors, just reflecting a world that's already out there. Kant just says, what if we've had it backwards this whole time? He proposes this radical idea. Our minds aren't passive receivers, they're active creators. They come with like a pre-installed operating system that actively organizes and shapes our experience. So it's not our minds conforming to objects, it's the objects that have to conform to our minds for us to even experience them.
Okay, but hold on a second. This raises a massive question, right? If our minds are actively shaping reality, doesn't that just trap us in our own little subjective bubbles? How could we ever have objective universal knowledge, the kind science depends on? To solve this puzzle, Kant had to zoom in on a really specific type of knowledge. He called this special knowledge synthetic a priori judgments. I know, it sounds super academic, but stick with me. Let's break it down. A priori just means you know it's true before experience. You don't need to go out and test it. Synthetic means the statement actually adds new information. His go-to example is 7 plus 5 equals 12. You know it's universally true without having to go count 7 apples and 5 oranges. But the concept of 12 isn't actually inside the concept of 7 plus 5. For Kant, this was the key. This was the magic ingredient that makes things like mathematics and physics possible. But, and this is a huge but, Kant's brilliant idea comes with a serious consequence, a major trade-off. If our minds are the ones organizing everything, then it forces us to ask a really tricky question. What is the world actually like, before our minds do their thing? What is reality in itself? And this leads us to maybe the most important distinction in all of Kant's philosophy, the difference between phenomena and noumena. The phenomena, that's the world as it appears to us, the world organized by our minds, the world of science, the world we can actually know and study. But then there's the noumena, that's the world as it is in itself, completely independent of our minds. And Kant's big conclusion is that we can never know this world. It's fundamentally off-limits. Think about it. It's like trying to see your own eye with your own eye. You can't. The very tool you're using to perceive things prevents you from perceiving it without its influence.
So now we're starting to see what he meant by that quote. This is the knowledge he has to deny. All those old metaphysical arguments that tried to use pure reason to prove the existence of God or the freedom of the will, Kant says they're all impossible. Why? Because they're trying to talk about the noumenal world, and our reason just isn't built for that. He showed that when you try to use reason outside the bounds of experience, it just ties itself in knots. It's a total dead end.
Okay, so if we can't know anything about these huge topics, God, freedom, the soul, is that it? Is Kant just another guy tearing everything down? Not even close. This is where the real genius kicks in. He makes this incredible pivot. He shifts the whole conversation away from theoretical reason, the part of our mind that asks, what can I know, and over to practical reason, the part that asks, what should I do?
And this is the second half of that famous quote, making room for faith. By drawing a clear line in the sand and saying, this is as far as knowledge can go, he's actually building a kind of firewall. He's protecting these big ideas. Science and theoretical reason, he says, can never disprove God or freedom, because those things don't exist in the world of phenomena that science studies. He's created this protected space for belief.
But it's even more clever than that. Kant isn't just defending some old-fashioned idea of faith. He's completely changing what it means. For him, belief isn't some weak version of knowledge, or just a wild guess you make about stuff you can't see. No way. It becomes a rational necessity that's grounded in our moral lives. It's not about what we think. It's about what we must do. So how does this work? Well, in his next big book, Kant lays out what he calls the 3 postulates of practical reason. A postulate is basically something you can't prove, but you have to assume it's true for the whole system to even make sense. Think of them as the necessary ground rules for morality to function at all. Okay, so postulate number 1, freedom of the will. We have to assume we're free. I mean, think about it. The whole idea of you ought to do the right thing is completely meaningless if you're not actually free to choose. Second, immortality of the soul. Kant says the moral law inside us pushes us toward perfection. But obviously, nobody can become perfectly moral in a single lifetime. So for that goal to be rational, we have to assume we have an endless amount of time, immortality, to work on it. And finally, number 3, the existence of God. Let's be honest, in this world, good people suffer and bad people prosper. For the moral universe to be just, we have to postulate a God who can, in the end, ensure that a virtuous life leads to a happy one. Otherwise, morality feels like a cosmic prank. And all of this comes together in this brilliant German term he uses, Vernunftglaube. It translates to rational faith. And that's the whole point. This is not a blind leap in the dark. It's not wishful thinking. For Kant, this is a kind of faith that is actively demanded by our own reason. To be a coherent moral person, you have to act as if these things are true. It's a practical necessity.
So, let's just wrap this all up. What has Kant done here? Well, he limits the reach of our knowledge, but he does it to save what is essential for us to believe. He tears down all the old, shaky, metaphysical proofs for God, not because he's an atheist, but because he wants to rebuild belief on a much stronger foundation. And what is that foundation? It's the unshakable moral law that exists inside every single one of us. For Kant, belief is no longer about trying to guess the secrets of the universe. It's about a deep, rational commitment to living a moral life.
And that, right there, is Kant's breathtaking solution to the crisis of his time. He manages to save science by drawing a boundary around it, and he saves faith by rooting it firmly in our practical, moral existence. It's an incredible balancing act. If this has sparked your curiosity and you want to dive even deeper, feel free to get in touch with the philosophical exploration arm of Energy and Personal Excellence, LLC. You'll see the contact info right there. Thanks for joining me for this deep dive.